Hi, this is Matt. Welcome to the Old Dad Jazz podcast. And I have with me Tara. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, people.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Mom. No, my mom's not watching.
You're giving your mom a shout out. She's gonna be like, oh.
Well, my mom, bless her heart, she cannot hear. So my mom is deaf. Also, she doesn't understand English. So there's also that as well. So
She would know though, based on the waving and the maybe lip reading or something, she would know.
Yeah.
That you gave her a shout out.
Yeah, I don't know, but by the way you dress, maybe she'll think it's a date or something. I don't know.
Oh my gosh.
Anyway,
A Zoom one.
Yeah, right, in public, in front of everybody, right? I was gonna ask you, so how did you get into the whole psychic / mediumship thing?
I feel like it's a long story, but a
Okay,
short story.
how did you grow up? Did you grow up like spiritual or?
Yes, I definitely grew up in a spiritual house, but it was mixed with both. So my mom was religious, but also very spiritual. So in my house, it could be, okay, pray about something, but it could also be like, did you see an angel last night? Do you feel any energy
Oh,
around you? All of that sort of stuff. So there weren't any boundaries or limits, which I think helped me later on in this part of my journey,
right.
because some people do have to deal with that. I come from a very super strict religious background, and now that I'm a psychic or a medium, maybe their family is a little bit harsh on them or maybe not accepting of them.
Right.
You know
So
what I mean?
yours was more like a liberal.
Definitely. My mom was like flipping cards. We would talk about dreams and things, and it really opened me up. I feel like it opened me up to everything under the sun. Like, I didn't think anything didn't exist. My mom would talk to me even about aliens. We would talk about everything under the sun. There wasn't anything that was
Right.
like, oh, that's not true. This is a fantasy. This is that. And I felt that kept my dreamer spirit or my spiritual self just very open. You know what I mean?
Right. And so what denomination was this Christianity, I presume?
Yes, definitely Christianity. But I felt that for her generation, for the older generation, doing tarot cards or doing psychic work, because my mom did psychic work as well, it was kind of frowned upon. So she
Right.
knew how to keep her boundaries in terms of like, I'm not going to shout this out to the world. Now you can have a website and people are like, oh, I'm going to visit your psychic website. But I feel like back in the day, it was like, that's the devil's work, or this is this kind of work. And she had to kind of be careful because people, it could go to that next level very quickly.
Right. It
You know what
depends
I
where
mean?
you're from. If you're from a small town somewhere, maybe in Alabama or Mississippi nowadays, you might still get into trouble, Yeah. A
That
town
is
of
so true.
a town of 1,000 people, everybody will know if you have a website, eventually, I guess.
I actually experienced that. I went on a trip to Georgia, and I'm out here in California, even though I've lived in like a couple of different places. But when I went to Georgia, it's almost like it was a different atmosphere. But it was a smaller town, so I don't want to speak for the entire state of Georgia.
Right.
But they're like, oh, what's your passion? What are you interested in? And I was like, oh, I'm interested in, this, and this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm exploring. And they're like, I just saw that like tighten up, and I was like, oh, okay, let
Yeah.
me calm down. Let me, keep it kind of under wraps, not in a sense of hiding, but in a sense that it's never my intention to like offend someone, especially when they believe something differently. I'm not going to just like bust into some place like, you're going to believe what I'm going to believe. No, that's not the case. I'm like, okay, this is what they believe. I don't want to offend, what they might have been grown up taught. And I feel like no one has all the answers. So they might have some answers that I don't have. I might have some answers that they don't have. And the fighting, I feel like, just lowers the vibration. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, do you ever feel like you met some people that are in your kind of business that are not nice compared to in the Christian circle?
I do. You know what? It was actually really surprising because when you think of like just spiritual people, a lot of people think the first thing that image that pops into their mind is hippie, free loving, just whatever you are, come as you are. And
Yeah, big
sometimes
beard. Yeah,
there is a lot of ego behind some spiritual work. It's like, well, I'm a psychic, I'm a medium, I'm better than everyone else. I'm so gifted, I walk on water. It's coming from that where it's like
right,
looking down on people that might be developing or practicing. Because I feel like whatever talent you have to continuously practice and develop. It's not, you're not God's gift to the earth type thing.
right,
But I have met a couple of people, not a lot, that had that vibe and just made people feel very inferior to their gift. And it just made them feel like, I should just quit now because I'm not as amazing as this person. Or even if they were a healer, whatever kind of mode they were in. And it kind of caused people to quit, if that makes sense. And I was like, I don't
right,
like that. And I don't want to put out that vibe. I don't want to ever make people feel that way because
right.
I feel like it could be that turnaround situation because there's people that have been maybe a psychic or a healer for a lot longer. And then someone else comes into it very quickly and just they're
Takes
just such a
over. Yeah,
natural. And but they do have that like humbleness about it. It's like it just happened. And it's just such an amazing, I love it when that happens because I'm always rooting for the underdog. So
oh
if
yeah.
it happens like that, I'm like, yeah, you know what I mean? They're like, yeah, I just woke up and I just had these abilities. I'm like, yes, keep practicing, but that's awesome, you know?
So like in basketball, you root for like Houston Rockets or something, like they never win.
You know what's funny about that? If I'm like watching like a sporting event, especially UFC or something where they're fighting sometimes, surprisingly, people might be surprised. It's like, you watch UFC? Like sometimes I watch like things like that. And if the person that's taking the most hits, I'm like, come on, you can do this.
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
just get that fighter spirit. And I'm like cheering for them, even if maybe the other person has been working harder. So maybe they deserve to win. But in my mind, I'm like, don't lose. You've come so far.
Yeah, don't give up. This is the tactic from wrestling, though. Like they fall down and then they like, oh, they almost like, they can't move, and all of a sudden, once they get attacked, they jump up, and that's the drama of it. Unfortunately, UFC doesn't seem to work that way usually, but there is comebacks though. Yeah, there is comebacks. I've seen some UFC and stuff like that.
Good comebacks are amazing. Oh my God.
They are instances where you think somebody's gonna be gonna get choked out or something, then they escape and then they give a good fight after and stuff like that. There was a fight. I don't know the names. Volkov or something, Australian dude, and he was
Mhm.
almost. This is like I think last year, and he was almost like. I didn't expect we're gonna talk about this. This is crazy. That he almost like lost like 2 or 3 times. He was like choked out, almost like or got into a lock, some kind of lock, but he escaped 3 times and he ended up winning. So, but that's
Yeah.
rare. That's rare though. But I think he was expected to win because he was a champion. But still, it was a tough battle though.
See, it goes into perspective too, because maybe in the times where someone thinks that they're about to lose, they have that maybe, not that I'm a loser, but kind of that vibe or that perspective, like, okay, I'm already losing, and it just helps them to give up.
Oh
But
yeah,
then that switch, I feel like maybe some of the comebacks are coming because they're like, you know what? I'm gonna give it everything I got. I haven't lost yet. I'm gonna wait until the bell rings before I stop fighting. And I feel like
right.
it spreads into so many different categories, even life. Just when you think like, okay, I should give up, I suck at this, or this is something that's not going well. Like, let me just give it a little bit more work. And it's in that midnight hour that you're like, yes, I'm so glad that I kept trying. And if you go back to that moment, you're like, wow, I almost gave up on something important, or I almost quit, or I almost didn't see something through. And I'm like, that's amazing. And I feel like
Mm.
more people should like incorporate that,
That's interesting. We
you
talk
know?
about not giving up because I've openly discussed maybe on the podcast as well, actually. If I should if I should give up like on the whole university thing or not. Because like some things you go into and you're not quite sure if this is 100% you, because you kind of dragged your feet even getting in and you weren't 100% sure. And then once you're doing something, then you're not doing 100%. And this is the case totally for me for university in this case. Like I've been just dragging my feet, not really participating much, and then skipping some class and all that. Oh, it's terrible business.
I feel that sometimes I get what you're saying,
Yeah,
where, there's that initial not really putting 100% in there. So it makes you question if you should even go for it. But
right.
then I feel like on the other hand, it's that like subliminal or subconscious fear of what if I'm not as successful as I thought I was going to be? What if I don't rock this out? And that's sometimes even more scarier than just doing it. So that kind of prevents us from putting our best foot forward. I feel like everyone's done it too, where they've put something off for a very long time, and then when they finally did it, they're like, this was so easy. Why did
Yeah,
I procrastinate this so long? But it was that like fear that something was gonna happen, or you know what I mean?
yeah,
And it's kind of that unknown. We always want to shy away from that unknown future type deal. But it also gives us interest. It piques our interest to know about the future, but it could also give us anxiety thinking
right.
about it.
So do you think
So
deadlines are really important then for people? Because otherwise you wouldn't do anything sometimes, like like not just university school, but like any kind of projects that I know, like when they make movies, they strict deadlines usually, especially if they work for a studio, and if they don't meet them, then the studio is going to cut funding. So this like life
mm,
or death kind of thing almost feels like.
I feel that deadlines are amazing, but sometimes we let society make we let society make our deadlines for us. So I hear like some people say, well, I'm almost 30, and let's just say that they're not married, they don't have kids. I'm off my deadline, I'm behind. And then they get down on themselves. But that's the
Behind
deadline that society,
schedule.
yeah. And they add a deadline to things that can flow either to the left or to the right. I do feel like some things hold on,
Somebody's calling. Yeah, there you go.
got it. I'm back. I do feel like some things should have a strict deadline, but when it comes to more life aspiration, more passion, I feel like the more passion involved, and if you have that freedom, because obviously if you're at a job, you might not have the freedom to say, I'm going to turn this in when I want to.
And then you
But if
get
you do
fired.
have that,
Yeah,
yeah, and then you're jobless, and that's another set of deadlines and issues going on.
yeah.
But if you do have that time to like let yourself flourish, I'd rather take a little bit longer and get the product that I want to get than rush myself. I met the deadline, but it wasn't my best work. It's almost like procrastinating, turning in a paper.
Yeah,
You turned it in on time, but you're like, if I had actually had 5 more days with this, I could have completely blown them away. And
done
that
that
wasn't the
so many
case.
times, so many times.
Yeah, we all have.
Yeah.
We've all done it.
So were you a psychic from an early age then? Because like your mother was, so maybe there's a talent. I've heard this said that maybe it's a talent that runs in the family.
I definitely think so too, because however, I think it goes both ways. I don't want to, for anybody that might be watching and that has had zero experiences from childhood, they might be like, well, I'm out. Like, I'm going to step back. But I was just in that position where I did have experiences with psychic and mediumship from a childhood, but I was also in an environment to where that could flourish. And I feel that if you're in an environment where you're not allowed to flourish, or where it's kind of more um, looked down upon, you might not even be able to know you have abilities because you're so set on, okay, I can't do this. Or maybe what you saw, sometimes people will say, like, I kind of thought I saw something out of the corner of my eye. No, that's crazy. That's not logical.
Yeah.
I'm in a logical house, and we have that feeling. Or a lot of people are talking about like sleep paralysis, where they wake up and they're like, there's a logical explanation for this.
Is
People
there?
have those experiences. experiences too. I've totally had them as well, but from a young age, just seeing people walking through the living room and then telling my mom, being able to have someone I can confide in. I'm like, oh my gosh, I just saw a man walk through. And she's like, really? That's awesome. Like knowing that it was like more of a spirit. That's awesome. Versus like maybe if I was in a household where it's like, I just saw a man and they're like, what? We're taking you to a shrink right now to the
Right.
hospital. We're getting your brain checked
To
out.
the exorcist or something like.
Yeah. Yeah, we're gonna put holy water on you and just.
I mean, the holy water is not bad. If you have a bad reaction to holy water, there's something wrong, I think. Well, you know.
Where do they? Okay, my question about holy water is: do they just get tap water and just bless it, or does it come from the sky? Okay,
Yeah. You can make your own. You can make put it in a glass and put a sticker on as holy water of Mary or something. You can do that. Yeah.
You know what's crazy? Okay, this is so random. I'm like getting out of the screen. Okay, I have a whole jar of water because I went to this place called Yosemite. This is just like a national park. Okay. And there's this waterfall, and I just assumed, I'm like, this is nature's water. It's flowing. It has life in it. I'm going to collect it and use it. I don't know if I'm using it necessarily as holy water, but I'm like, this is special water. Whether that's true or not, I'm not sure, but I do feel like it has more energy because it came from nature, a natural source.
Yeah.
I'm going with it, but I have this whole jar, and because we're on the topic, I was like, let me show my jar
right.
Of waterfall water.
I do believe that if you bless water or if you bless your meal, that energetically it's better. But that's maybe on faith. I don't know if we can test that actually scientifically. Maybe not yet.
A lot of people do talk to their water, and so I feel like maybe saying those, it almost makes me think of affirmations, like saying positive things towards anything, even a book, something. I feel like it does bless it. I feel like our words are blessings, but they can also be curses, obviously. Cursing someone out, maybe.
So if you're eating cookies, it's better. Let's see. I think I have one here.
Less calories. It's less calories if you bless.
So if you have a cookie, bless your cookie and then eat it. I don't do that actually. But it's a good idea.
Yeah, we might be starting a trend. It might be a blessing technique where people start, I don't know, maybe if they want to lose weight, they're like, I start blessing my food. I just lost all the weight that I needed to, and my skin looks healthy. It could start a thing. I don't know. We might be on to something.
Did you ever hear of Map of Consciousness? There's a book called Power versus Force by Dr. David R. Hawkins, and he wrote this book that delineates the levels of consciousness. And he said it's like from 0 to 1,000, and 1,000 is like Buddha, and 200 is the level of integrity. And he found that most people are below the level of integrity. But he also found that if you bless your food, then it jumps 10 points according to that scale.
Every time, does it add up?
Like, I mean, maybe it depends. Maybe it depends how long you pray or your sincerity in the prayer. I don't know, but it's something.
I mean, I have seen different scales of consciousness,
right?
Where they're talking about like hatred kind of being a low vibration, and they're talking about love, forgiveness, all this other, or peace and things like that. And I thought that was really awesome. But I feel like sometimes people can, I don't want to say look at it wrong, but they feel that, okay, I'm experiencing anger right now, so I must be this super low vibration, something's wrong with me. Right. But I feel like it's a ladder. Like you have to go through the emotions and climb it up. I don't feel like someone's born and they're like, I'm enlightened, I'm floating. I feel like going through that, even as a child, this is my toy, you can't have it. Like going through that struggle and going up, and then having maybe setbacks or something maybe very sad and grieving, or something unforgivable. It's hard for you to like forgive something. That could be that little setback. But I feel like it's even more enlightenment to have a setback and to overcome it. It almost makes you more enlightened to have those experiences and like jump it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. I think maybe that's why we are here to have challenges, although sometimes it's like, why is this happening to me, you know?
Yeah, totally. I totally understand what you mean.
It's like that old joke where somebody's wife leaves him, his kids leave him, you know, his house burns down, all his money is gone, and you know, he cries out to God. He's like, why God, why me? And God answers, he's like, I don't know, George, but something about you just pissed me off. So,
That's when
but
you just
yeah, I think
it's
it's karma, I think, in a metaphysical way, maybe a karma of, or lessons, let's say.
I mean, it takes us into perspective too, because I feel that there's such intense suffering. And
Yes.
maybe there's intense suffering in areas of the world where, you know, because when people think of karma, they think of that person slapped that person in the face, they got slapped back in the face. That's karma. That would
Right.
be karma working in like possibly perfect form, whatever. But then when you see the situation where maybe a younger child or someone that you feel like really doesn't deserve suffering is experiencing this suffering experience, it's almost makes your mind question of like, okay, well, what did they do? Where's this karma coming from? And
Yeah.
it kind of makes your mind like wonder, and then you want to go deeper. But sometimes people just can't accept it. They're just like, this is wrong. This is what's going on. But I feel that sometimes suffering can be a collective thing. Does that make sense? It collectively brings humanity up. I'm not saying that, you know, we should all be suffering or anything like that, but I don't feel like anyone's suffering is um, for nothing. You know
Right.
what I mean? Even if it might seem that way, even if it might seem like, okay, well, they just did all that to lose everything for no reason. I do feel like it brings conscious, even on, or at least on the energetic level, it does bring consciousness up of the collective to a higher level, if that makes sense.
Right. But what would you say to if you don't learn the lessons though? If you have something bad happen and you keep not learning lessons, I guess you're not ready yet. Because I know in my life
Mm,
some things kept happening, and maybe with different people, different circumstances, but same kind of nasty lesson or whatever, you know, you know, kind of
yeah,
painful stuff, you know.
it's because we're going to go into like this deep rabbit hole of the topic of pain and just
Yeah, why not?
recycling that. Because when we look at pain on paper, just perfect, look, we're looking at it on paper, we're like, no one, why would I want pain? Pain sucks. I would want to avoid pain at all costs. But then when we find ourselves in these cycles of pain, especially if it's on me doing the same thing over and over again, part of me feels like, okay, do I maybe I like pain? I know it sounds weird, but it's like maybe there's a part, a subconscious part, or maybe
Yeah.
um, a lower vibration part of ourselves that feels comfort in it. I don't want to use the word like, but it's just comfortable to experience this. It's so familiar. We already know what's going to happen. And even if it's something we don't want to happen, we're just like, well, I know what's gonna. It's almost comforting to know, like, okay, well, this person's gonna fuck me over, and then they fuck you over, and then it's like, well, I knew that. You know, it sounds
Yeah.
so weird when you say it out loud, but in the mind, it makes sense. But
Or
when you say
like,
it out loud, you're
yeah.
like, mm,
Or this is too good to be true, or this person for
yeah,
sure is gonna ghost me, or whatever. It's just, or this is
exactly.
not, I shouldn't trust this person in business, but then you kind of ignore the hunches and you go along with it, and then shit happens and you're like, I wish I hadn't done that. uh,
Mm, it's crazy because you were talking about hunches,
yes.
and I feel that it it can be a little bit confusing for, you know, most people, because to be able to differentiate between a fear-based cycle and a hunch. So
Right.
I feel like one is based in love and one is based in, okay, moving into a new direction, and one is based in, I'm just freaked out right now. I'm very scared. I don't know. Because if someone walks up to me or if someone's walking past me on the street, and let's just say maybe 3 weeks ago I was mugged, I'm very scared of everyone that's walking by. I don't feel like that's a hunch telling me that person walking past me is going to mug me again, or
Right.
the new person's gonna, it might be that fear. But some people confuse that as like, this is my hunch telling me that everyone's out to get me. They want to all mug me and all
Mm.
this other stuff. Whereas the other one is like, you know what? Now I just have an awareness where I'm able to like pinpoint, you know what, this is actually is my intuition telling me that this is not a good situation versus me just kind of living under a rock, if that
Right.
makes sense.
Right. So how do you then train that intuition? Because I assume that maybe there's some kind of training to it that you could become better.
I feel that a lot of people, I feel that everyone has intuition for sure. Everyone has intuition, but a lot of people want to jump straight into, I'm going to give you a prediction, I'm going to tell you everything. But it does start with an internal, I want to say spiritual, but maybe for the people that might be watching that aren't spiritual, even if they're an atheist, that inner change, maybe that character change. And so I feel that until that is kind of starts progressing, until we make up our minds that I want to start progressing as a person, the
Mm.
intuition will be off. It will be off because I'm going to be thinking, like I said, based off of past experience, future anxieties, all of these things are going to be on my mind. And intuition's like Wi-Fi. It should just come in.
Right.
You know what I mean? But if you have like aluminum hat on or anything blocking that, or anything, glasses or that are changing your perception of what's going on,
Right.
it's going to throw off your intuition big time. There's some people that have accused people of cheating. They're like, you're a cheater, this is what you are, blah blah, and that person hasn't done that, but they're like, my intuition is telling me that. But that's their intuition's not telling them that. It's this fear that's telling them that.
Yeah.
But
The
it's this
paranoia.
confusion.
Right.
Paranoia. It's also close on the line that it's easy to fall on either side and be confused which one you're using.
Yeah.
If
So
that
how
makes
can you tell then if it's one or the other? It's really hard to tell then, because sometimes I'm like, oh, it's my imagination. I'm just like, and so you disregard hunches, or like the repeated hunches, or maybe, but sometimes it's very low. Like sometimes you only get one or two, and then you're like, nah, and then it happens.
I feel that intuition mainly comes from a place of peace. And peace is not to be confused with happiness, that it's going to, because, what if something intense is going to happen? What if your intuition is trying to tell you, don't get into the car, right? You don't know why your intuition would tell you that. You have some place to go, you need to get into the car. But it's just a peace that comes over you that's like, you know what? For some odd reason, you're not freaking out. You don't have a list of newspaper cutouts or anything crazy like that. You're just like, for some reason, I have this peace that just washed over me, or this kind of inner awareness or presence that I should not do this. And it's very kind of direct and straight to the point. It's a statement. But I feel the other one is more like, do it. Like you're just screaming inside your head. It's
Hmm.
50 million thoughts. I feel that the more confusing a message is, the more likely that it's not your intuition. Because intuition comes in and should be very, hey, boom, kind of straight to the point. It's one line of thought and you process it. And you might even question it back in your head where you're like, wow, I just got this message. This is very interesting. Versus the other one will be like, don't get in the car, don't call your mom, don't go to the doctor. It just piles up into this anxiety and
Yeah.
tension,
Yeah.
and that helps people like to do it.
One time when I read The Art of the Deal by the previous president, Donald Trump, he said that he often used gut feeling in buying real estate. So that one time he was wanting to buy something in Atlantic City, and it looked very attractive on paper. Everything was good, but his intuition was telling him no, no. And then a couple months later, there was a big tornado or something happened and devastated the whole area. And then I think he was able to buy it after for a lot cheaper than he would have before or something. Or I don't know if he even bought it, but like he saved himself a lot of money by not buying it when it seemed like a good opportunity. But he was like, my gut feeling says no. So he, like, people like that, they don't talk about like intuition per se, but gut feeling is intuition. So like I think he relied in business a lot on the gut feeling, like, or he would meet somebody, and obviously you can be wrong, but
Yeah. I think people underestimate
yeah,
the fact that you can, if you have abilities, let's just say, and once again, I believe everyone has intuition, whether we choose to listen to, it's like advice, whether you choose to take the advice or not, that's up to each individual person.
right,
But people think that, okay, my abilities can only be used in a spiritual sense. Maybe if I'm giving readings, if I'm doing healing work, but your intuition can be used, like in your example, in business, in science, in scholar, like any realm of where you have to trust that inner guidance inside of you. And I think a lot of people kind of just put it off to like the more spiritual side of it.
right,
But the more you use that, the more aligned I feel like your life becomes.
right. So maybe I should have listened to my intuition. Was like, I don't know if I really should go. But
And you're like,
actually
let's do it.
starting this was kind of like on a limb. I was like, might be something fun, and I followed the intuition, I guess, so, and then it ended up being okay, more uh, more than
I
okay.
feel
So
I feel like your mind is meant to do things like not just this, but things like this as well. Because I feel that you have a very like curious mindset. You want to know the way things work. Not everyone. I feel like everyone has curiosity, but not everyone has like a high level of curiosity where it's like, no, tell me more. I really need to. I really want to know how this works.
right,
And I feel like that's more so like kind of how your vibe is. So this is perfect.
for
I feel like this
me,
was you, yeah,
yeah.
following your intuition, a perfect segue into you following your intuition and you following it, no matter how long you do it or you decide to do it. But this was a good choice.
All right, thanks. I get confirmation from a psychic that what I'm doing is a good thing. That's a good thing, I guess.
It was a good thing.
And how did you then get into which is a totally different topic, and there's a lot more taboo about this as well, being a medium.
Mm. So I feel that that came a lot later. But now that I'm looking back on it, I felt that I had a lot of mediumship experiences before I actually knew what a medium was. Like in terms of seeing people that are passed over, seeing glimpses like angels like passing by me, that kind of stuff are is
Whoa.
associated with mediums. And so I just always thought of it as, one category, it's psychic, you know? And later on, when I joined the group, I wasn't even coming in with like, oh, I've been doing psychic stuff since I was a kid. I kind of
Right,
laid back in this group and I was just like, I want to see what they're about. I always like to go into everything as if I know nothing because that's how you learn.
right,
And so just sitting back and just understanding like, wow, there is a big difference, or at least in this industry, they are separating psychic and mediumship into two different categories. And then having that experience where a woman comes into my room and she tells me her name and she's just giving me this information and maybe that was the most direct experience that I've had or that I had thus to that point where you know what I mean? Because in terms of seeing
like
things,
a ghost game.
exactly. But in terms of like actually communicating, it's like tell them this,
How did they
tell
look
them
like?
that.
Did they look like a person, just you can see through them?
So the way she showed up to me is she showed up in all black. And for some, I mean, maybe because I've been experiencing those since I was a kid, I wasn't afraid at all. And a lot of people would have been like, I would have been freaking out. I would have been like I said, calling the ambulance or whatever.
Right.
But when she showed up, it was very, very graceful. And she just kind of manifested in my room.
Wow.
And before that happened, though, I felt ringing in my ear. It was the most intense ringing I've ever had. And I even made a joke in the group. I was like, I think I might be getting something might be wrong with my ears because they won't stop ringing. And one of the mentors were like, go with it. And I was like, okay, I'll go with it. And that's when she kind of like manifested. And I was like, you guys are going to think I'm crazy, but I have this woman, her name's Heather, and this is what she's telling me. And she's talking about tattoos. She's talking about the month that she passed. And from that point on, I was excited, but in my mind, I was still freaking out too, because I was like, you can't unsee it. You can't unexperience that kind of moment.
Yeah.
When you're like, I am physically face to face talking to someone that I know is not, maybe spiritually they're in my room, but I know that they're not physically in my room for sure. And they're giving me valid information. And that part of mediumship is what I enjoy too. I love that about it, because a lot of psychic stuff can be future. You can go into people's past, of course. Sometimes people, let's go into past, let's go into the present. But a lot of people go to psychics because they're like, okay, what's going to happen? Or what are you feeling energetically in 6 months?
But this is
in
a
year?
potential, and it's not 100%.
It can definitely switch, because I do believe that we have free will. But when it comes to mediumship, the person has already passed. So everything you're bringing up is verified right then and there. And I love that part of it, because part of me, when I give readings, I have to wait until that time. And then they're like messaging me back like, this happened. This is awesome. But I have to wait that long. And I call myself a nosy psychic, in terms of like, once I want updates, like keep coming back, not coming back as in for another reading, but tell me how everything worked out, all this other stuff. But mediumship, I was like, I just sparked this flame inside of me. And I have this personality where I'm definitely a go-getter. Once I'm interested in something, there's nothing that can stop me from just reading everything about it, everything on YouTube, mentorship, all this other stuff.
So do you see their face when you see them, that there's like, or did they have something over their face, or like, would you be able to recognize a photo if somebody showed you when they were alive? In
this particular instance, they came to me full on face, like everything. And then when the lady later on showed me a picture, they were the same person.
So however, the same like eyes, everything. Wow.
Same everything. The only thing is, because she showed up to me in all black, I couldn't see any tattoos. Like I couldn't, when they show up all like that, I can't see what's underneath. Because if I can see a tattoo, I'm like, I see a butterfly tattoo, or I see a name. I can't quite make it out what it is, but I do see a name on there. But not all spirits come that way. And I had to learn that the hard way, because I wanted all of my readings. I was like, this is how I talked to them like I'm talking to you right now. I'm like, this is how I want you to show up for me. But I learned that different loved ones, different spirits manifest in different ways. And that was very hard for me to accept, because I'm like, why can't, if this spirit could do it, why can't, everyone should show up like this? This is so easy. This makes things so simple. But I learned later that, okay, I've done a total reading where I didn't get to see their face at all. They were showing me images, and it was more like this symbology thing of what they were interested in that, and kind of communicating in that way. So there's so many different forms that each spirit can communicate to you, that it keeps you on your toes. It definitely keeps me on my toes, because I'm always wondering, okay, are they going to show up in my room? Am I going to hear something in my ear? Or am I just going to feel the presence? Or am I going to see images in my head? All of that stuff is always on the table. And sometimes it's a mixture of everything. And so that was a little bit harder to adjust to. But once I adjusted to it, I'm like, I accept it. Come on in, come as you come. I'm gonna change my frequency to whatever you're. It's almost like the radio, switching it.
You have to change your frequency. That's interesting. So do you receive training for this, basically?
Definitely. I don't believe that all mediums necessarily have to. Like if there was a medium, if I went into a group of mediums and they were like, well, I've never received formal training, I don't think it's like college where she's like, oh, well, I have, so I'm just the better me.
Or it's like acting like, oh, I went to this Juilliard acting school. Yeah. Oh, it's right.
Yeah, Definitely not like that. But because of my personality, once again, I have to dabble in everything. I have to know what, and I'm still learning each and every day, but I just had to dive right in. And the first mentor that I had, just the sweetest, she breaks it down into ways that I didn't even think of it, like just how to communicate, almost like spirit etiquette, because a lot of times people don't think about this from behind the scenes, but just saying thank you for information. So if I receive a piece of information, especially if it's like, oh my gosh, that was a big piece of information, the loved
Right.
one is very much like, maybe blown away by it, whatever the case might be. Thank you for giving me that information. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for lending your energy and letting me communicate with your loved one. All of that stuff is the kind of thing that elevates my energy, my frequency, to be able to communicate with them
Right.
better.
Um,
Because it's just harder to connect if you're on a lower frequency.
right. Is you said that often when you do things like this, that or when you do sessions, that there's spirits around and stuff like that, that you can see everything. Is that true?
Yes. So when a spirit does come, let's just say they're not trying to communicate with me in forms of pictures, they're not trying to communicate with me in forms of my ear. If they're a very strong presence, they'll show up to me, and when they show up to me, I can see them, but they're still a little bit transparent. It's not as if someone is in the room, as if I know that I can touch them.
Right,
It's
right,
just almost like a hologram or like a projection of that sort, which is still blows me away every time, because I'm like,
right.
I feel like maybe I'd be more freaked out if it was
Yeah.
if it was bone, maybe flesh and bone
Oh
thing.
man, like one of those was it Princess Bride, that movie, if it showed up like that, like one of those characters, like half dead, like flesh and all that.
Yeah, I feel like the fact that I can kind of know that it's transparent, it just knows, oh, this is a spirit. But if I walked into a room and just saw what I couldn't see through, or what I didn't think was a spirit, I'd be like, hey, what are you doing here? I wouldn't, you know what I mean? That kind of vibe
Mm,
with, what are you doing in my room? But because I can kind of tell it's a different way that they manifest themselves, that I know it's a spirit. I'm like, oh, completely safe, at peace, versus me seeing like someone, like, I guess in terms of like flesh and bone. But it's definitely if I had to pick a favorite way, because I just mentioned so many ways of communicating. I do like hearing better. I
right,
like it when I can hear words or hear phrases or hear maybe accents or something to that point, or know that. I feel more comfortable with being able to hear than being able to see, because sometimes when they manifest that strong, maybe they're not doing a lot of, they're talking, but they could still be talking telepathically to you, versus if
right.
I can just hear it, like hearing it in head bud, then I'm like, okay, I know exactly what you're saying. It's the clearest form of communication, in my opinion, but I will accept whatever they bring me, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. Did you see anything now, like in this moment, or prior to beginning this, or
I don't see anything now, but it's really interesting. Before I did get on, I felt a younger male approach me. And so sometimes this just happens because, maybe it's for you, or maybe it's for somebody that could be watching later on. But this younger male was approaching me, and he was just kind of talking about having this issue with substances, or kind of having like a more rougher lifestyle, or more kind of being a knucklehead in a way. And so he was
yeah,
just kind of letting me know that. And but he was kind of letting me know, like, hey, I'm okay now, but this is kind of what I did. Sometimes I didn't always make the best choices, and
right,
because of that, I passed early, or I passed before I felt like, what other people would have felt like was his time. And I kind of had that interaction before I came on, and I was like, okay, got it. But he just made me feel like I said, maybe like drugs and alcohol and just a lot of things were kind of piling up in his
Right.
life, and he was just trying to deal with everything. And so that's what happened before I popped
Wow.
on
So
YouTube.
he's like a lost spirit or something, like wandering the
Yeah,
earth.
I feel like sometimes when it comes to spirits, they always know who's going to be like maybe watching or who's going to be, in that sense. So they always find who they're connected with. But sometimes I do have like random spirits that do just come up to me, and they're just talking. Maybe it's because they're not used to people being able to hear them, or sometimes I see them, people being able to see them. And so they definitely take that as their opportunity to chit chat with you and just tell you certain things. Because I remember one time, and she wasn't for anyone in particular, there was a spirit that came and she was telling me, it's more of a tragic story, so I won't get into like the gruesome details, but just that she was murdered,
Mm,
and there was just more graphic things involved, and it was this kind of feeling of like, what? I kind of felt like someone was confessing a crime to me that I couldn't report. You know what I
right.
mean? Because I know that they're already passed over, but it kind of felt that kind of vibe where I was like, okay, and just making sure that I had to bring my level back down. It was my first time experiencing that, so it was a little bit more, my antennas, as I say, were like going all around. But then I brought it back down. I'm like, she just wants to share her story, especially
Right.
when
Right.
people pass and they don't get to share that story, or the story that's being told is not the truth. They will find like mediums, or maybe just people that don't even consider themselves mediums. Sometimes people have seen ghosts or they've seen spirits, and they're like, that was the only time I've ever saw it, but they were speaking to me, or I had a
Right.
message or something of that sort, even if they didn't know that person, because sometimes that happens too. They're like, I didn't know who
Mm,
this was, and they spoke to me.
right. I think for me, it probably freaked me out a little bit if I saw something, unless it was maybe an angel or something. That'd be kind of cool, I think, to see. Maybe for Christmas, I will see something.
I I feel like just with you saying that, they'll make sure to pick a form that is
For
a little
Christmas.
bit more easier for you to accept. Your next podcast will be like, oh my gosh, I saw an
Oh
angel.
yeah. Yeah, and I saw it and I shit my pants.
I don't even think you would admit that part. You're like, I
No,
saw
no,
it and I
no.
was all
Yeah, no.
cool about it. I just pushed my hair back and everything was fine, when in reality, you like knocked over all the furniture. But guys play it cool.
Cast
So
it out. Be gone in the name of Jesus, and then be gone.
you threw a cross at it. They're like, what is happening here?
No, but that's really advice. When there's bad spirits around, you can cast it out in the name of Jesus Christ, and they have no choice but to go. However, I don't know how if it's a good spirit, what it would do though. Like it.
You have coffee, you have tea with it.
Oh yeah.
You just
Be like
sit back and
be like
see what's
cheers.
going
Let's
on.
have tea.
I
uh,
feel that it's crazy because we were talking about like casting out and like the power of certain words.
yes.
And you know how like, across the world, people have done similar things, and maybe they didn't have that exact word or but I feel like in their heart, it's almost like a frequency, this frequency of them, like this crying out for help, this kind of surrender almost. And I
Right.
feel like
Right.
that's that light shining through us, just like, get out of here, be gone, you know?
Yeah.
So it's really awesome.
So I thought maybe for this podcast, maybe we'll dabble a little bit in what kind of readings do you do first for the psychic parts? I don't want to freak myself too much, so I'm trying to gauge what I can do.
Um, I do tarot card readings. I do just, general psychic readings. I do chakra readings, where we feel like maybe which chakra might be, maybe stronger, which one might be, because I feel like sometimes our chakras are taking a lot of power, and then another one might be a little bit dimmer. I think of them almost as like lights.
Okay.
Um, I
Let's try
do love,
general.
I
Okay,
do
go on.
I do love readings too, but I feel that they're very delicate things. I feel like love readings are very delicate. And the reason why, and I do want to put this out there before we go into your general, because when you already have feelings for someone, so let's just say you already have feelings for someone and it just doesn't turn out, or you're getting information, or maybe psychically I might be getting like, hey, this person might not be as into them as they're into them. Having
Oh,
to find a way to say that information, or maybe kind of being tactful enough to do that, it's the most difficult thing in the world. And I have had some people that got very upset, and I wouldn't be mad at them because I understand where that's coming from. It's like, no, I want you to tell me that this person's my soulmate. I want you to tell me that we're going to get married and have 5 kids. And I'm
you
not
can't
seeing
handle
it.
the truth.
And I have to tell them that I'm not seeing it. But I always say this, and I'm going to say this before your general thing. I do believe in the power of free will. I feel like the whole purpose of a psychic and mediumship reading is just to give you some extra insight to see if you're going to go in that direction. For example, if I'm with someone that is hurting me, maybe like they're physically abusive, maybe they're verbally abusive, and a psychic tells me, hey, I do think you should remove yourself from the situation at the most safe time you can. I have the free will to stay in that situation, for sure. But then that advice also gives me the power to choose a new direction. And
Right.
then once you're on a new path, then a whole different future is set for you. It's the difference between if like someone were to go to jail or someone were not to go to jail. Two different futures, two different paths.
Right. So, but do you think sometimes is taking away people's choice though, by you telling them like what would be the best option, let's say, or if you stay here, then bad things are gonna happen. But maybe that was their, maybe it's maybe that was their you know how sometimes you can have a prior agreement before a lifetime. So it'd be like, so you're
A soul
maybe
contract.
or maybe that, yeah. So maybe it's the you interfering with that what they've set before they came here. So and then you're like, actually, if you continue this, you're gonna end up dead, or then you're like,
Oh my gosh, that'd be a
no, no,
very
you
intense
know,
dream.
some bad,
I get what you're saying.
yeah.
I feel that nothing is more powerful than our individual souls. So even if a person is kind of, let's just say, because I do want to speak on this as well, some people kind of stand on the psychic platform, but maybe they might not be being honest. So they could
Oh,
be telling false information, or information that might be made up, or just kind of guesswork. And the person could feel like, okay, this is very valid information. I feel like after you receive that message, you get so many signs to whether that is in alignment with what your soul is doing or whether that's not in alignment. So if I say, I do feel, nursing, is in your card. If I were to say that, and for the next year or so, you're like, okay, medical people, you get a medical scholarship or all this other stuff, and there are these signs that are coming that are confirming, like, hey, you know what, I never thought about this, but this could be something I could do. I feel like that's confirmation. But if I tell you you're supposed to be a nurse and you just got this amazing opportunity to be a DJ, you know what I mean, and all of your life paths are pointing towards music, that's how you kind of differentiate, okay,
right,
did the message I received, was it true, or maybe
yeah,
was
yeah,
it a
yeah.
little bit off? And your life will confirm that as it goes on, and or
You
it
get
won't. And
signs, you get
either
signs,
way,
yeah.
you have a base point to go. But I would suggest that people kind of
Those kind of
avoid
psychics.
someone that is, like, some tips would be, if someone is kind of making it seem like you're cursed. I've seen this so many times, you would not believe.
Oh yeah, I have
Oh,
seen that. Well,
you're
they've told me as
cursed.
well that they have
Your
a
family,
hex on me or something.
all of that is a red flag in my book. I have to do this special spell and psychic work to get this family curse. It's going to be $1,000 and your firstborn. Red flag. if they're saying, okay, you have to come back to me once a week just so they can get paid in a sense, I
Oh,
feel like
right.
a good reading, you might not need to come back at all. You
Yeah.
might not need to, or it may be like a year. It shouldn't be every month. And I do tell people that come to me for readings, I do kind of say that. I'm like, hey, you don't want a reading to turn into an addiction. You don't want it to feel like every choice I make, I have to go to a psychic, I have to go to a medium, I don't know what to do. I don't believe in that at all. And I know some people base their business off of kind of that fear-based thing where if you don't come back to me, we don't know what's going to happen. Like, no, we're just guides. I feel like anyone in this energy field, we're just guides in a sense. So energetic guides giving, pieces of information that maybe that person has been receiving already, but sometimes we block ourselves from the
Right.
information that's closest to us, we'll block it. Same thing with mediumship. A lot of times people can talk to their own past loved ones. I am a firm believer that people can, but when you're grieving so much,
It's
it
hard.
makes
Yeah.
you doubt. It makes you doubt whether what you're receiving, okay, is it because I already know this, or is it because I'm actually speaking? And that's the reason why people do sometimes go to mediums, because, hey, they're telling me information that they wouldn't know. It gives me more of a firm confirmation that my loved one is here.
This
So all of that.
I have this kind of weird question now because like I've been watching a lot of Don Rickles lately. I don't know if you know who Don was. He was like
Mm-hmm.
they call him an insult comic, but he said of himself he was exaggerating stuff, and uh like a classic story was when he first met Frank Sinatra, and Frank had a reputation for being with the mafia, and he said, and Don meets him and said, Frank, make yourself comfortable and hit somebody, and that made Frank laugh, and he didn't get killed, so that was good. They ended up becoming good friends. But I don't know, I felt like the joke I made earlier about that my mom or something might feel like this is a date. I felt like this is like I felt after this is maybe like this is something Don would say, but I think it's because maybe I've been watching him a lot lately, so maybe it's that, because if
Yeah,
you watch a lot of something, then you kind of pick up their essence in a way, maybe in a way,
definitely. I
right?
could see that a lot, and I can see that in both ways of like sometimes picking up an essence that I feel like there's energy, just like relationships, there's energies that complement your energy and that amplify it and it's like, yeah, this feels good. And then there's that energy, maybe if I pick up something that it really doesn't align with who I am or what my energy is about,
Right.
and it just feels like awkward, or I feel like I know people use this word all the time, so it might be misunderstood if I'm saying it. But sometimes that awkwardness of doing something or that feeling of not being organic is sometimes someone trying to align with an energy that doesn't mesh with theirs. It's almost,
Yeah.
like peer pressure. Like me, maybe if I'm trying to be cool and do something that's not out of my box, and I'm just
Right.
like,
Fake it
yeah,
till
this
you
is who
make
I
it. They
am.
trying. Maybe after 2 months they'll be a complete addict. They'll be like, or metal band or band or something like that. You never know. All right. Let's go back to the general. Let me see.
Okay.
Give me a little bit, and then I'll stop you if
Okay.
it's too much.
I I will, let's pick out three things of what I'm feeling, and
Okay.
then we can go deeper if you want to. So let's see
Okay.
what we're getting. The first thing that popped up, and I don't know if this was like in the past, but they were talking about, and when I say they, it's just like whatever the information that's coming in, it's normally the guides. Sleep. They're talking about sleep or your sleep cycle. So they're making me feel like there was a time where you were like had insomnia, or you weren't sleeping very well, or you're only sleeping like 2 or 3 hours or waking up all the time. They're talking to me about your sleeping schedule.
Okay.
But I feel like in these times of like your sleep being off, it was they're making me feel like it's a little bit different because it's like deep thought. So it's like waking, most times sometimes people wake up and they're like try to go back to sleep, but they're making me feel like there's something that was disrupting your sleep, but it was almost like deeper thoughts, or you like figuring things out, or something coming into your head, but you being able to remember it after you woke up, or maybe later on into the day, like, wow, I kind of woke up in the middle of the night, or I couldn't sleep and this is what I was thinking about. So they're bringing me into that. Hold on. Okay, and they're also bringing me into, and I hope I can say this on your podcast, but the second thing they showed me was a little bit of a wall, and it might have been something that you've already broken down, but kind of like this thick wall when you meet people, this wall of like, I want to say that it's mistrust. I don't want to like jump to that conclusion and say it's mistrust, but normally when I see walls, it's like keeping you at a distance. And it's almost a comfort in keeping people a little bit farther away and having your space. And I feel like space is a little bit more important to you. However, hold on. I do feel that you have, I'm going to like possibly make you blush on this. I do feel like you do have a more romantic side of you, or this more, it makes me think of like Greek, like this
Greek.
side that, like this romantic, like poetry type side to you. But I feel that a lot of times when people meet you, they think completely different. So I don't know if you're often like called like an asshole, if I can cuss on your podcast or something like that. But I feel like what their first impression of you is like way different from like when they're like taking back the layers.
Right.
Hold up.
Okay.
One more thing. I want to see what else. This is fun. I always get excited when I'm getting a reading. I mean, giving a reading, because I'm like, ooh,
Right.
I feel like that person's giving me permission to sneak into there. Hold on. Okay. And I do feel like there was a struggle. You can let me know like later on or after this if you've already passed this point. But there was a struggle with a lot of pressure being placed on your shoulders, but you not wanting to take on that responsibility, or you not wanting to like, or maybe come off like, oh, that you're a little bit less responsible than what you are. Because I feel like they're trying to show me this like balance of you being responsible, but you not wanting to come off as responsible, or there being like more weight or more responsibility placed on your shoulders that did cause a little bit more stress, or did cause a little bit more anxiety. But I feel like you might have been able to keep that a little bit more cooler, or maybe not everyone was privy to this going on, but they're showing me that as well.
Okay. You want me to comment on this?
Yep.
Well, sleep
for America and the world to see.
Sorry, what? Yeah, for everybody to see. Let's see. Sleep. I don't think. I think it's more like I go to sleep late, so it's sometimes I feel like I don't actually. It was a time where maybe a couple weeks ago, a couple months, where I felt like actually if I go to sleep now at 2 a.m., I actually can't sleep. So I was like, yes, but then again, my usual sleep cycle is very kind of late, especially if I don't have to wake up in the morning or have nothing in the next day. I'm like, yeah, why not? So I often like have like the time, to think or to research stuff or to do what I want, like after
in
like
the middle of the night.
after 1 a.m. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So I don't think it's more of a waking up. I would say more of a staying up late and maybe not sleeping enough. That's also maybe a part of it as well.
Like throwing off the schedule a little bit, but you have your own thing going on. But okay, cool.
Yeah. So with the wall thing, and that's I'm kind of aware of that. I think maybe it used to be more. Maybe there's less now, but for sure, like I think for a while maybe it was a defense mechanism as well, because like I live in a hostel for years as well, so that kind of like, I don't know, there was like you're living in a place and people come into your home in a way. That's how it felt like sometimes. So it kind of like blocked things out, but that's more of a necessity thing at a circumstance level. But I think I did that in general more maybe in the past as well. Cause like,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, and then responsibility. Maybe there was a little bit of that when I was home. Before I got here to Scotland, I was back home in Slovenia, and yeah, it didn't end up too well because I think there was some, they wanted me to be different than what I was. So maybe they saw that
Mm,
as that I'm being irresponsible because I didn't want uh to get rid of the beard, the crazy hair and all that. So
yeah.
that's made me appear to be irresponsible to some people in my family. So, but anyway, that's neither here nor there. Yeah, that's what happened. I think that's what you're referring to, maybe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. And then I also called you a Greek.
A Greek.
Not
Oh, that.
not not saying that you were actually Greek, but they're making me feel like, I'm not saying that you're writing poetry, but they're making me feel like this inner poet or this like renaissance, like on the inside. But it's not something that I feel like I would see you and like let's just say not going into it psychically. I wouldn't be like, oh yeah, that's exactly what I think about him. No, but they're making me feel like so many layers, such this like deep renaissance feel, and they're just making me think of Greek stuff. And I was like, I need to know because that's what I was like, I need to know if this is what's
I,
up.
I don't know. I really,
Mm,
because I started with relationships later on because I was too preoccupied with video games early on. Like I'll tell you
mm,
a true story. When I was 17 years old, I was I don't know why that year we had school was in the afternoon, so I was walking back home in the evening. And at the time, I was really addicted to this one particular video game called Championship Manager, right? So this was big on my mind. I was going home thinking about the game, I think. And I don't know why, but three people stopped me. There was like, I think it was two guys and one girl. And they were maybe about my age or ish, my age ish. And they stopped me and just the guy spoke, but he was like, do you want to go out with this girl? I don't know. To this day, I don't know if it was a prank or something, but the first thing my mind jumps to was, oh man, I won't be able to play my game as much. So I was like, nah.
no.
Yeah.
But have you ever got into writing? Like have you ever like got into something where you're like doing more like writing or doing more poetry or like reading lots of like works or literature like that?
No, not at all. Well, not really, not much
Mm,
into poetry. Although I did write some dark one when I was usually when I was down. Yeah, but
really? That was like a therapeutic thing going on?
yeah, but that was very rare. I have not written much poetry at all, I think.
Did you save them?
Um, I don't know. Maybe one of them was years ago on Facebook, but most of them now. I don't think. Yeah,
You posted it?
just one. This is years ago.
What?
I was foolish. It was just
Okay,
like
you're gonna have to insert this poem in there. We have to. The viewers want to see this poem. I just want to let you know
maybe I
if you
deleted it.
want.
I don't know.
Oh no! Now it's
um
gonna go turn up missing today.
yeah.
For anyone that's trying to search it after this, by the time this video is posted, it will no longer be there, people. So
Yeah,
don't go searching for it.
yeah, I'm actually surprised. I don't actually never I think I have a talent for writing, yes, but I've never been interested in poetry. I have to say that. Yeah.
Mm, it might be something. Sometimes we have those talents that we don't completely
Wait,
explore.
like knitting
But
in that movie where Sylvester Stallone goes in the future and
what
dem
I don't know
demol
what movie.
demolition man. Sorry.
Oh my! Well, speaking of knitting, this is I don't know if it's on or off topic.
Yeah.
My friend, she started knitting, and she knits bears and jackets and shoes. it was something that she never thought, like, she's like, nah, whatever. And then once she got into it, it just kind of blossomed. So I do feel like writing, or a form of writing, whether that's blogging, whether it's doing something in that form, will come a little bit stronger into your life a little bit later on. And you're going to be like, if it does, you have to go back into the comments on this podcast. But
Oh
I do
yeah.
feel like you're going to be doing a little bit more of that in the future, whether you think so.
Poetry. Oh man.
Maybe, but just in terms of like writing,
Oh yeah,
it could be
writing.
like
Yeah, I can see that.
blogging, but not like turning in papers. So I know you're in school, so not turning in papers per se, but it just feels like more of a written platform where people are almost looking at you like, wow, the way you write, it's very like pleasing to like what their eyes, or they're feeling it a lot. You get what I'm saying? So it almost kind of feels like that vibe where it doesn't sound like bland. It sounds like I'm really digging in deep. I'm going into everything, and they're just gonna like the way that you explain things. And this is gonna be in written form. So
Right.
know that it was said here first. So that way you're like, what?
Okay. Like passionate, dynamic writing or something.
Mm-hmm.
You said Renaissance and Greek. Does that kind of mix though? Renaissance, Greek, Renaissance, Greek
I
man.
just feel like it's just like lots of art, or lots of culture, but the culture is based on something like more artsy. I just look at both of those cultures as very like, if I go there, it's like about beauty, about what you say, how you speak, how you write, things like that. I mean, or both those periods, whatever the case might be. And not just those, there's plenty of other cultures or time periods that were like that. But it just made me think of, those are the first two things that I think of. I'm like, boom.
Okay. All right. Let's see. I do study, by the way, I'm studying economics and theater. That's my
No
that's
way.
my thing. Yeah. Although I was dismayed to find out that actually the theater that we're studying is mostly analysis, which bores me, and is also political that I don't agree with. So sometimes I argue with the whole class. One time I just argue with everybody. But hey.
I feel like sometimes arguments in certain instances can stimulate the whole crowd, because you're
Oh
making
yeah.
people think. When to argue, you have to think, and you
Yeah.
have to think on your toes, or else you're just going to be sitting there just getting monologued at. So you might have been stimulating them.
I'll give you an example. I was late for this class half an hour. I'll admit that. Okay, I come in, and the professor's talking about how America was built on slavery and all that. I'm like, hold on, like, what's the percentage of America that was built on slavery? He wouldn't say and all that. And then I kept like, and colorblind class thing to his view means to hire black actors in white roles, but not hiring white actors into black roles. So in a way, it's like the way he saw colorblind casting is actually reverse discrimination and all. So I was questioning that, and then not only was I debating him, but then other students like answer me. So they so I'm like, man, this is like I'm blasphemous here. Like I'm thinking on my own, and they're like disagreeing.
They're all like gonna get their pitchforks, as I say, and get you. But I feel that I can just imagine you walking into class late and just starting. People might have called you the troublemaker. Just starting trouble. Like, I'm here. Not only am I here, you're wrong. You're wrong.
Yeah, like, the whole class is wrong, and here's why. That's the old O'Reilly. That's the old Bill O'Reilly line. You're wrong, and here's why. And
yeah.
Right.
I'm
kind of afraid to ask. Sorry?
I said, I'm gonna be laughing about that later.
I'm kind of
the mental image.
Right. So Medium is usually about dead people that you know, that you knew.
Mm-hmm.
But can you talk to anybody though?
What do you mean?
Like, can you just bring anybody in?
In terms of like celebrities
Oh
or
yeah,
like
or like
past,
anybody, yeah.
I haven't had much experience talking to or trying to call in people that weren't trying to speak with the loved one.
Oh,
You know what I'm
okay,
saying?
got
Because
it.
I know that some maybe celebrity mediums, they're kind of like, okay, we're gonna call Michael Jackson in here. I'm talking to Michael Jackson. And I just feel like it's good to have, I don't want people to like run away with this time mark that I'm gonna put on it, but maybe a decade of reading consistently for your career. And then after that, after you have all that under your belt, then you can kind of start reading celebrities. But a lot of times when people are reading the celebrity's family is not there. Like there's not too many people that can validate it, and some of the stuff that can be validated is kind of already on the internet. So I feel like sometimes it is more for
Right.
entertainment purposes only. But there have been some, high-end mediums that were maybe Michael Jackson's family was there, and they're like, Michael Jackson telling us this. And there's a lot of aspects to maybe a famous person or celebrity that we wouldn't know. So when they validate that with their family, they're like, he did this, and it's no way you can find that on Google, none of that stuff. That's awesome. But to just be like, okay, George Washington, come on in. I would want to like validate that with something, or I don't know. I feel like that's when people bring in. Have you ever heard of a spirit box?
No, but it sounds like a spirit box, like you're just kind of picking out stuff.
Okay, so it's almost by no means am I expert on the spirit box, but it's almost like, what would I call, a spirit walkie-talkie? People might be correcting me on the page, but you ask a question, out loud, and then it's able to pick up different frequencies
And
that kind of allow you to hear audibly what's happening. Like
whoa,
you'd be like, okay, when did you pass? And then the spirit box would be like, you can hear it. It might sound a little crackly. July, if I said when, where, how about where? Okay, in Virginia, things like that. And a lot of people have done that when it comes to people that they don't know, if their family's not there, and they use the spirit box to communicate because it's just more concrete, especially if you can't validate it with their family.
mm,
It's really cool, and you might end up investing in one and doing
right.
that because it's really awesome. Or
I
some people
don't
use
know.
the rods.
Right. So now that I think of my family history, I don't know that many people that have died actually. I don't know,
I'm
like,
actually
on my
I'm actually the
family.
same. It's harder for people to, even though I'm the medium, I'm a psychic. When I go into certain like circles, it's harder for them to pick up on someone for me because I don't have that many people in my family. You know what I mean? That have
Yeah,
passed because they were so much older because my mom had me like a lot later in life. And so it's very hard for the medium to just like bring that forward. And sometimes there are people that really don't have that connection. So you really can't, you can bring that person forward, but they wouldn't be able to validate what you're saying. So you kind of don't go at it too much.
right. So we might try if you want to. Let's see what happens. I'm open to it.
With you, I haven't had anyone step forward to me through, because normally, but by now, since we've been talking so
Oh
much,
yeah,
it would be
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
someone would have like been here, like, oh my gosh, by the way, this person's with me.
Yeah, that's what I expected.
So it's like one of those things where sometimes people think that, okay, because my family member possibly didn't step forward, that something's going on, or they didn't want to talk to me, or sometimes it's just that they're giving it space. Maybe they're like, okay, this is what they're doing, I'm going to kind of give that space and kind of do their thing. Or sometimes they're like, okay, they might not know the information that I can bring through, so
Right. They're not familiar with your work, so they're like, I'm gonna stay away from her for now.
get out of here. No. But sometimes it's almost like if I were to say, just as a statement, oh, did your, great grandmother like doing this? And you're like, I'm not really sure. And
Oh yeah,
then
right.
like, did she really like this? And you're like, I'm not. And then it kind of goes on to this like, yeah. And then at the end of the reading, you're like, okay, well, was she there? Was she not there? Because if you can't validate, you're like, I'm not sure anymore. It kind of puts the person out like, yeah, I didn't know.
Right, right. You ever done a past life regression on yourself or been to somebody?
I tried to do one via YouTube, but I don't think that that's the most legit way to do it. I
Nah.
have not gone in and done one officially, but I'd be so open to doing one because I just want to know. I just want to know.
Right.
Have you
Well,
done one?
yeah, I've trained in one years ago, but I haven't done it in years. So yeah, it was intense the first time we tried as a group, because you can imagine there was in this type of classes mostly women, but then in the end I had the most trouble because I had what happened was I went in. There was a lifetime where there was a woman in Egypt, and this woman, or me or whatever. I don't know if it's an actual lifetime. Could be like, I don't know. Maybe it resolves some kind of emotional stuff. But I saw this woman having a stillborn baby that died, and that for somehow I don't know why, just like it hit me emotionally really hard. So yeah, everybody was fine, but I was like on the verge of crying. So the teacher's like, ah, yeah, go take a walk. So
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
that is so
it's crazy,
obviously
huh?
awesome. It's emotional, but it sounds so awesome to be able to connect with that. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? Even if it's like on the verge of like, hey, maybe I'm still possibly a skeptic on it, I'm not sure. But that the fact that you had that vivid of a, that's not something you just like, I'm randomly going to McDonald's or somewhere and I'm just going to think of that. That's one of those things that, whoa, this is inside of me for some odd
right.
reason, whether it's coming from a past life, whether it's psychically being picked up, no matter what, it's still an amazing
Yeah, you know
experience.
what's crazy though? That this is maybe too much information, but on the first day before the start of the workshop, I had terrible stomach aches and diarrhea and all that stuff, all that crap, pun intended. And
Yeah.
then it turns out that in the past life regression, this woman after the stillborn baby, something went wrong with maybe the husband resented what happened, and she felt maybe she felt guilty or whatever, and got estranged, and then with her husband, and then she ate something bad to end her life.
Mm.
So it's crazy that I had that diarrhea or whatever, the fear maybe, or and then after that it was gone. So it only happened the night before, I mean on the day at 4 in the morning or something. So isn't that crazy? It's a crazy
That's
story.
amazing. You're gonna make me book mine this week. I want to book it, and then I'm gonna
Yeah,
update you with what happened.
it's a
If
cool
they tell
thing.
me that I was like a president or something, I'm gonna come back in and I'm gonna showboat and like, yeah, I was a president. You didn't know.
Yeah,
Mm.
most people just have ordinary lives and then they die on the field or something, like, there was a
But
woman
mine might be really cool.
right, there was a woman in class. She was like, oh, I was a baby in Australia, like, I don't know, 60 years ago or something, and my parents were out working, and I crawled outside, and a snake bit me and I died. What? Oh, all right.
See, all of these things are so like I don't think you can just come up with it just on the spot randomly. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? There's something connected with it. But I wonder what not the science, but like how it's like hypnotizing you. Like you're being
yeah,
hypnotized and going, okay.
yeah. It's hypnosis, and with hypnosis you can go to your childhood or you can go further, and sometimes people discover by accident. They're like, good hypnotists would be have their client in the couch, and then they would say the magic words, which is go to the first event where this first happened, and then the client would start describing the French Civil War or something like that, like 17th century, or and describe the costumes and all. And you're like, well, there's something here.
I feel that what's her name? Is her name Dolores Cannon? I haven't read any of her
She's
books,
famous,
but I know that she's always talking about past life regression. But she's always interested me because she goes into like people talking about aliens and different kind of dimensions and different things like that. And I'm like, yes, that's cool. To go back into a past life regression and like be a reptile or something just completely different from like the human form. That's what she's saying in some of the books. I'm paraphrasing so much. I'm pretty sure she's describing it in a completely different way, but some people are having these experiences where they're not only just having lives on Earth, but they're having lives in other dimensions or on other planets. And I'm like, wow, that's cool.
Yeah, there's a guy named Michael Newton that also was he specialized the life between life regression, which takes longer and it's much deeper regression. And apparently you remember the time period in between lives. So after you die in a previous lifetime and where you go and the process and the debriefing that goes on, and then you have your small group or whatever. Yeah, this is a interesting story, but I don't know. It would be nice, I guess we'll all see after we die.
So, I know. Hopefully not for a very long time. But when it happens, I'm going to be like, all right, now I see what's going on. I've been here before, obviously, if anyone believes in reincarnation. But maybe I've been here before, but here I am again. I'm back. Right. Send me back in, coach.
Yeah, I don't worry about it too much because like it's already set. So when it's like when the boss calls me back, that's when I go back. The big boss.
Boss calls me.
Yeah. All right.
Some people go kicking and screaming. Just like, no, I'm not gonna go. You're just gonna go walking in, like, yeah, I'm ready to go. Everybody else is like, no, don't take me back.
Yeah. The boss will be like, you were due here 2 years ago, and now you show up. Yeah.
No.
So, if people want to contact you, so you do psychic readings and you do mediumship.
Psychic readings, mediumship. I'm also certified with Reiki. Okay. And just different stuff like that. And I definitely do audio message readings too, because I have noticed that there have been, there's some people that feel very nervous on Zoom or the phone. So I will go through this audio message reading and they feel so much more comfortable just messaging. So I do that. And I know not everyone does that. So I'm just throwing that out there as well. And they can definitely contact me on Tara the Medium, but I was sending you my link. So just in case you want to put the link in the comments or anything like that.
I'll put it in the description. Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you for being on, Tara. It was a pleasure.
Yeah. Yeah. Am I supposed to clap? I like it.
Yeah, we made it to the end. And thank you everybody for listening or watching the podcast.
Bye, guys.